We spend a lot of time looking for happiness when the world right around us is full of wonder. To be alive and walk on the earth is a miracle, and yet most of us are running as if there was some better place to get to. There is beauty calling to us every day, every hour, but we are rarely in a position to listen. The basic condition for us to be able to hear the call of beauty and respond to it is silence. If we don't have silence in ourselves, if our mind, our body are full of noise, then we can't hear beauty's call. There's a radio playing in our head. Radio station NST, non-stop thinking. Our mind is filled with noise, and that's why we can't hear the call of life, the call of love. Our heart is calling us, but we don't hear. We don't have the time to listen to our heart. Mindfulness is the practice that quiets the noise inside us. Without mindfulness, we can be pulled away by many things. Sometimes we are pulled away by regret and sorrow concerning the past. We revisit old memories and experiences, only to suffer again and again the pain we've already experienced. It's easy to get caught in the prison of the past. We may also get pulled away by the future. A person who is anxious and fearful about the future is trapped just as much as one bound by the past. Anxiety, fear, and uncertainty about future events prevent us from hearing the call of happiness, so the future becomes a kind of prison too. Even if we try to be in the present moment, many of us are distracted and feel empty, as if we had a vacuum inside. We may long for something, expect something, wait for something to arrive to make our lives a little bit more exciting. We anticipate something that will change the situation, because we see the situation in the present moment as boring, nothing special, nothing interesting. Mindfulness is often described as a bell that reminds us to stop and silently listen. We can use an actual bell or any other cue that helps us remember not to be carried away by the noise around and inside us. When we hear the bell, we stop. We follow our in-breath and our out-breath, making space for silence. We say to ourselves, breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing in and out mindfully, paying attention only to the breath, we can quiet all the noise within us, the chattering about the past, the future, and the longing for something more. In just 2 or 3 seconds of breathing mindfully, we can awaken to the fact that we're alive, we're breathing in, we are here, we exist. The noise within just disappears, and there is profound spaciousness. It's very powerful, very eloquent. We can respond to the call of beauty around us. I am here. I am free. I hear you. What does I am here mean? It means I exist. I'm really here because I'm not lost in the past, in the future, in my thinking, in the noise inside, in the noise outside. I'm here. In order to really be, you have to be free from the thinking, free from the anxieties, free from the fear, free from the longing. I am free is a strong statement, because the truth is, many of us are not free. We don't have the freedom that allows us to hear and to see and to just be. Being silent together. I live in a retreat center in southwest France, where we practice a kind of silence called noble silence. The practice is easy. If we are talking, we are talking. But if we are doing something else, such as eating, walking, or working, then we do just these things. We aren't doing these things and also talking. So we do these things in joyful, noble silence. In this way, we are free to hear the deepest call of our hearts. Recently, there was a day when a lot of us, both monastics and lay people, were having lunch together outside, sitting on the grass. All of us went to serve ourselves and then joined the group to sit down. We sat in concentric circles, one small circle within a larger circle, and then another, still larger circle. We didn't say anything. I was the first to sit down. I sat and practiced mindful breathing to establish silence in myself. I listened to the birds, to the wind, and enjoyed the beauty of spring. I wasn't waiting for others to come and sit down so I could begin eating. I just enjoyed sitting there for about 20 minutes or more while other people served themselves and came and sat down. There was silence, but I felt that silence was not as deep as it could have been, perhaps because people had been distracted while getting their food, walking as they held their plates and then sitting down. I sat in silence and observed this. I had a small bell with me, and when everyone was seated, I invited the bell to sound. Since we'd just spent a week together practicing listening to the bell and breathing in and out mindfully, we all listened very well. Right after the first sound of the bell of mindfulness, the silence felt quite different. It was real silence, because everyone had stopped thinking. We focused our attention on the in-breath as we breathed in, on the out-breath as we breathed out. We breathed together, and our collective silence generated a strong field of energy. Silence like this can be called thundering silence, because it's eloquent and powerful. In this silence, I could hear the wind and the birds so much more vividly. Before that, I'd heard the birds and the wind, but not in the same way, because I didn't have the deepest kind of silence. Practicing silence to empty all kinds of noise within you is not a difficult practice. With some training, you can do it. In noble silence, you can walk, you can sit, you can enjoy your meal. When you have that kind of silence, you have enough freedom to enjoy being alive and to appreciate all the wonders of life. With that kind of silence, you are more capable of healing yourself mentally and physically. You have the capacity to be there, alive. Because you really are free. Free from your regrets and suffering concerning the past. Free from your fear and uncertainty about the future. Free from all kinds of mental chatter. Being silent in this way when you are alone is good, and being silent in this way together is particularly dynamic and healing. The sound of no sound. Silence is often described as the absence of sound, yet it's also a very powerful sound. I remember the winter of 2013 to 2014 was not so cold in France, but we heard it was very cold in North America. There were more than the usual number of snowstorms, and sometimes the temperature went below -20 degrees Celsius. I saw a picture of Niagara Falls at about its coldest. The falls had stopped falling. The water couldn't fall anymore. It was frozen. I saw that image and was very impressed. The cascade of water had stopped, together with the sound. About 40 years ago, I was in Chiang Mai, in the northeast of Thailand, in a retreat for young people. I was staying in a hut near a stony creek, and there was always the sound of water falling. I enjoyed breathing and washing my clothes and taking a nap on the big stones in the creek. Wherever I was, I heard that sound of water falling. Day and night, I heard the same sound. I looked at the bushes and trees around and thought, since their birth, they have heard this sound. Suppose this sound stopped, and for the first time they heard the no sound, silence. Just imagine that if you can. Suddenly, the water stops flowing, and all these plants that from their birth have always, day and night, heard that cascading sound, hear it no longer. Think how surprised they would be to hear, for the first time in their lives, the sound of no sound. 5 true sounds. Bodhisattva is the Buddhist term for someone with great compassion, whose life work is to ease people's suffering. Buddhism talks about a bodhisattva named Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of deep listening. The name Avalokiteshvara means the one who listens deeply to the sounds of the world. According to Buddhist tradition, Avalokiteshvara has the capacity to listen to all kinds of sounds. He can also utter 5 different kinds of sounds that can heal the world. If you can find silence within yourself, you can hear these 5 sounds. The first is the wonderful sound, the sound of the wonders of life that are calling you. This is the sound of the birds, of the rain, and so on. God is a sound. The creator of the cosmos is a sound. Everything begins with the sound. The second sound is the sound of the one who observes the world. This is the sound of listening, the sound of silence. The third sound is the Brahma sound. This is the transcendental sound Om, which has a long history in Indian spiritual thought. The tradition is that the sound Om has the innate power to create the world. The story goes that the cosmos, the world, the universe, was created by that sound. The Christian Gospel of John has the same idea. In the beginning, there was the Word. John, chapter 1, verse 1. According to the Vedas, the oldest Hindu texts, that world-creating word is Om. In Indian Vedic tradition, this sound is the ultimate reality, or God. Many modern astronomers have come to believe something similar. They have been looking for the beginning of time, the beginning of the cosmos, and they hypothesize that the very beginning of the universe was the Big Bang. The fourth sound is the sound of the rising tide. This sound symbolizes the voice of the Buddha. The teaching of the Buddha can clear away misunderstanding, remove affliction, and transform everything. It's penetrating and effective. The fifth sound is the sound that transcends all sounds of the world. This is the sound of impermanence, a reminder not to get caught up in or too attached to particular words or sounds. Many scholars have made the Buddha's teaching complicated and difficult to understand, but the Buddha said things very simply and did not get caught up in words. So if a teaching is too complicated, it's not the sound of the Buddha. If what you're hearing is too loud, too noisy, or convoluted, it's not the voice of the Buddha. Wherever you go, you can hear that fifth sound. Even if you're in prison, you can hear the sound that transcends all sounds of the world. Your deepest concern. When you've been able to still all the noise inside of you, when you've been able to establish silence, a thundering silence in you, you begin to hear the deepest kind of calling from within yourself. Your heart is calling out to you. Your heart is trying to tell you something, but you haven't been able to hear it because your mind has been full of noise. You've been pulled away all the time, day and night. You've been full of thoughts, especially negative thoughts. In our daily lives, many of us spend most of our time looking for comforts, material comforts and affective comforts, in order to merely survive. That takes all our time. These are what we might call the daily concerns. We are preoccupied with our daily concerns: how to have enough money, food, shelter, and other material things. We also have affective concerns: whether or not some particular person loves us, whether or not our job is secure. We worry all day because of those kinds of questions. We may be trying to find a relationship that is good enough to endure, one that is not too difficult. We're looking for something to rely on. We may be spending 99.9% of our time worrying about these daily concerns, material comforts and affective concerns, and that is understandable, because we need to have our basic needs met to feel safe. But many of us worry far, far beyond having our needs met. We are physically safe, our hunger is satisfied, we have a roof over our heads, and we have a loving family. And still, we can worry constantly. The deepest concern in you, as in many of us, is one you may not have perceived, one you may not have heard. Every one of us has an ultimate concern that has nothing to do with material or affective concerns. What do we want to do with our life? That is the question. We are here, but why are we here? Who are we, each of us individually? What do we want to do with our life? These are questions that we don't typically have or make the time to answer. These are not just philosophical questions. If we're not able to answer them, then we don't have peace, and we don't have joy, because no joy is possible without some peace. Many of us feel we can never answer these questions. But with mindfulness, you can hear their response yourself when you have some silence within. You can find some answers to these questions and hear the deepest call of your heart. When you ask the question, "Who am I?" If you have enough time and concentration, you may find some surprising answers. You may see that you are a continuation of your ancestors. Your parents and your ancestors are fully present in every cell of your body. You are their continuation. You don't have a separate self. If you remove your ancestors and your parents from you, there's no you left. You may see that you're made of elements, like water, for example. If you remove the water from you, there's no you left. You're made of earth. If you remove the element earth from you, there's no you left. You're made of air. You need air desperately. Without air, you cannot survive. So if you remove the element of air from you, there's no you left. And there's the fire element, the element of heat, the element of light in you. You know that you are made of light. Without sunlight, nothing can grow on earth. If you continue to look, you see that you are made of the sun, one of the biggest stars in the galaxy. And you know that the earth, as well as yourself, is made of the stars. So you are the stars. On a clear night, look up, and you can see that you are the stars above. You're not just the tiny body you normally may think of as yourself. No need to run. Mindfulness gives you the inner space and quietness that allow you to look deeply, to find out who you are and what you want to do with your life. You won't feel the need to make yourself run after meaningless pursuits anymore. You've been running, looking for something, because you think that thing is crucial for your peace and happiness. You push yourself to achieve this and that condition so that you can be happy. You believe you don't have enough conditions to be happy right now. And so you develop the habit many people have of constantly running after one thing or another. I cannot be peaceful now. I cannot stop and enjoy things now because I need more conditions before I can be happy. You actually stifle the natural joie de vivre that is your birthright. But life is full of wonders, including wondrous sounds. If you can be here, if you can be free, then you can be happy right here and right now. You don't have to run anymore. The practice of mindfulness is very simple. You stop, you breathe, and you still your mind. You come home to yourself so that you can enjoy the here and now in every moment. All the wonders of life are already here. They're calling you. If you can listen to them, you will be able to stop running. What you need, what we all need, is silence. Stop the noise in your mind in order for the wondrous sounds of life to be heard. Then you can begin to live your life authentically and deeply. Chapter 1. A steady diet of noise. Unless you live alone in the mountains without electricity, chances are you're absorbing a constant stream of noise and information all day long without interruption. Even if no one is speaking to you and you're not listening to the radio or some other sound system, there are billboards, telephone calls, text messages, social media, computer screens, bills, flyers, and many other ways that words and sounds reach us. It sometimes can be impossible to find a corner of an airport boarding area without a television blaring. Many people's morning commute is spent absorbing tweets, texts, news, games, and updates on their phones. Even in those rare moments when there is no sound, text, or other information coming in from outside, our heads are filled with a constant loop of thoughts. How many minutes each day, if any, do you spend in true quiet? Silence is essential. We need silence just as much as we need air, just as much as plants need light. If our minds are crowded with words and thoughts, there is no space for us. People who live in an urban setting get used to a certain level of ambient noise. There's always someone shouting, traffic honking, or music blaring. The constancy of perpetual noise can actually become reassuring. I know friends who go to the countryside for a weekend, or who go to a meditation retreat, and find the silence scary and unsettling. The silence doesn't feel safe or comfortable because they are used to a background of constant noise. Plants can't grow without light. People can't breathe without air. Everything that lives needs space to grow and to become. Fear of silence. I have the impression that many of us are afraid of silence. We're always taking in something, text, music, radio, television, or thoughts, to occupy the space. If quiet and space are so important for our happiness, why don't we make more room for them in our lives? One of my longtime students has a partner who is very kind, a good listener, and not overly talkative. But at home, her partner always needs to have the radio or TV on, and he likes a newspaper in front of him while he sits and eats his breakfast. I know a woman whose daughter loved to go to sitting meditation at the local Zen temple and encouraged her to give it a try. The daughter told her, "It's really easy, Mom. You don't have to sit on the floor. There are chairs available. You don't have to do anything at all. We just sit quietly." Very truthfully, the woman replied, "I think I'm afraid to do that." We can feel lonely, even when we're surrounded by many people. We are lonely together. There is a vacuum inside us. We don't feel comfortable with that vacuum, so we try to fill it up or make it go away. Technology supplies us with many devices that allow us to stay connected. These days, we are always connected, but we continue to feel lonely. We check incoming email and social media sites multiple times a day. We email or post one message after another. We want to share. We want to receive. We busy ourselves all day long in an effort to connect. What are we so afraid of? We may feel an inner void, a sense of isolation, of sorrow, of restlessness. We may feel desolate and unloved. We may feel that we lack something important. Some of these feelings are very old and have been with us always, underneath all our doing and our thinking. Having plenty of stimuli makes it easy for us to distract ourselves from what we're feeling. But when there is silence, all these things present themselves clearly. A smorgasbord of stimuli. All the sounds around us and all the thoughts that we're constantly replaying in our minds can be thought of as a kind of food. We're familiar with edible food, the kind of food we physically chew and swallow. But that's not the only kind of food we humans consume. It's just one kind. What we read, our conversations, the shows we watch, the online games we play, and our worries, thoughts, and anxieties are all food. No wonder we often don't have space in our consciousness for beauty and silence. We are constantly filling up on so many other kinds of food. There are 4 kinds of food that every person consumes every day. In Buddhism, we call these kinds of food the 4 nutriments. They are edible food, sense impressions, volition, and consciousness, both individual and collective. The edible food is, of course, the food that you eat with your mouth every day. The second food, sense impressions, is the sensory experiences you receive through your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. This includes what you hear, what you read, what you smell, and what you touch. It includes your phone and text messages, the sound of the bus outside your window, and the billboard you read as you pass by it. Although these things are not edible food, they are information and ideas that come into your consciousness and you consume them every day. The third source of nutriment is volition. Volition is your will, your concern, your desire. This is food because it feeds your decisions, your actions, and your movements. Without any volition, without any desire to do anything, you wouldn't move. You would simply wither. The 4th kind of food is consciousness. This food includes your individual consciousness and the way your mind feeds itself and feeds your thoughts and actions. It also includes collective consciousness and how it affects you. All of these foods can be healthy or unhealthy, nourishing or toxic, depending on what we consume, how much we consume, and how aware we are of our consumption. For example, we sometimes eat junk food that makes us sick, or drink too much when we're upset about something, in the hopes of distracting ourselves, even if afterward that consumption makes us feel worse. We do the same thing with the other nutriments. With sensory food, we may have the awareness to take in media that are wholesome and enlightening. Or, on the other hand, we may use video games, movies, magazines, or even engaging in gossip in order to distract ourselves from our suffering. Volition can also be healthy, constructive motivation, or unhealthy, craving and obsession. Likewise, collective consciousness can be healthy or unhealthy. Think of how affected you are by the mood or the consciousness of the group you are in, whether that group is supportive, happy, angry, gossipy, competitive, or listless. Because each nutriment affects us so deeply, it's important to be aware of what and how much we are consuming. Our awareness is the key to our protection. Without protection, we absorb far too many toxins. Without realizing it, we become full of toxic sounds and toxic consciousness that make us ill. Mindful awareness is like a sunscreen protecting the sensitive skin of a newborn baby. Without it, the skin would blister and burn. With the protection of our mindfulness, we are able to stay healthy and safe and take in only those nutriments that help us thrive. Edible food. Most of us are aware that what we eat affects how we feel. Junk foods can make us feel tired, crabby, jittery, guilty, and often only momentarily satisfied. Fruits and vegetables, on the other hand, make us feel energetic, healthy, and well-nourished. Often we eat something not because we're hungry, but to console ourselves or to distract ourselves from uncomfortable feelings. Suppose you feel worried or lonely. You don't like this feeling, so you open the refrigerator and look for something to eat. You know that you aren't hungry, that you don't need to eat. You find something to eat anyway, because you want to cover up the feeling inside. When we have a retreat at any of our practice centers, we offer 3 healthy vegetarian meals every day, lovingly prepared with mindfulness. Still, there are participants who are worried about food. I have a friend who, when he first came to a mindfulness retreat, could think only about when he was next going to eat. For the first 2 days of the retreat, he was hungry all the time, and he didn't like the fact that there were lines for meals. He worried that the food would run out, even though it never did. Usually he would leave whatever activity he was doing early so he could be one of the first in line for meals. On the 3rd day of the retreat, this friend was in a sharing group where he was able to talk about some of his feelings about his father, who had recently died, and he got a lot of support from the group. The group ran a little late, but when he got to the meal line, he realized he wasn't anxious. He had a feeling there would be enough food and he would be okay. I'm very glad we didn't run out of rice and vegetables that particular day. Sense impressions. Sensory food is what we take in with our senses and our mind. Everything we see, smell, touch, taste, and hear. External noise falls into this category, such as conversations, entertainment, and music. What we read and the information we absorb is also sensory food. Perhaps even more than edible food, the sensory food we consume affects how we feel. We may pick up a magazine or go on the internet, looking at pictures and listening to music. We want to connect and be informed. We want to enjoy ourselves. These are fine reasons to consume sensory food, but often our real purpose in those moments is simply to run away from ourselves and cover up the suffering inside. When we listen to music, read a book, or pick up a newspaper, it's usually not because we truly need that activity or information. We often do it mechanically, perhaps because we're used to doing it, or we want to kill time and fill up the discomforting sense of empty space. We may do it to avoid encountering ourselves. Many of us are afraid of going home to ourselves because we don't know how to handle the suffering inside us. That's why we're always reaching for more and more sense impressions to consume. We are what we feel and perceive. If we are angry, we are the anger. If we are in love, we are the love. If we look at a snowy mountain peak, we are the mountain. While dreaming, we are the dream. A teenager recently confessed to me that he spends at least 8 hours a day playing video games. He can't stop. In the beginning, he took to games in order to forget that he wasn't feeling good about life, that he didn't feel understood in his family, school, and community. Now he's addicted to them. He thinks about video games all the time, even in the moments he isn't playing them. Many of us can relate to some version of this, trying to fill up the loneliness and emptiness inside us with sense impressions. Our senses are our windows to the outside world. Many of us leave our windows open all the time, allowing the sights and sounds of the world to invade us, penetrate us, and compound the suffering in our sad, troubled selves. We feel terribly cold and lonely and afraid. Do you ever find yourself watching an awful TV program, unable to turn it off? The raucous noises and explosions of gunfire are upsetting, yet you don't get up and turn it off. Why do you torture yourself in this way? Don't you want to give yourself some relief and close your sense windows? Are you afraid of solitude, of the emptiness and the loneliness you may find when you face yourself alone?